you may have been considered an introvert, or I still somewhat consider myself an introvert, but I think that some of the aspects tied to being an introvert sometimes have to do with a shyness or a timidness. And there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. However, we're not meant to live with um, we're not meant to live with pain or things sort of holding us back or shutting us down, or with fears or constraints or restraints, anything that keep us from fully being who we are and sharing who we are, or sharing what we have to share with the world or with those around us. And so this is a very, very important part of unfolding and blooming, essentially blooming, especially as a young lady, as a young woman. Every woman goes through a blooming phase, and so this is essential to that part. And so so as far as the journaling, that's the thing I want to talk to you about today, is to help you find your voice. Okay. The voice, and by voice, I don't just mean the sound of your voice. I mean who you are, your unique expression, your unique personality, your unique message, who you are, the truth of who you are, which is connected to your throat, arit, or chakra. Okay. I just had a joke in my head, and so I'm going to tell this joke since it came into my head. But somebody pronounced chakra. I just thought that was funny. Like, okay, chakra, whatever you want to call it. You probably know what I'm talking about. But arit is what we call the chakras in Kemetic Reiki. So your throat arit. So if you know about the throat chakra, you know that that's all about expression, self-expression, but it really is about the truth, okay? Because we can talk and we can share and we can express ourselves, but if it's not rooted, right, rooted in who we are, hence the root chakra, if it's not coming from the truth, which resides in your heart, okay, then it's not your true, authentic expression of self. Okay. So all of these things are connected, obviously. So when dealing with the throat chakra and issues of self expression and being truthful, you have to actually acknowledge the truth of what's in your heart, whether or not you think it's good or bad. Okay. So I did another video about self-acceptance. It's the previous video from this one. And I'm talking about practicing and learning how to release the perspective of looking at least when looking at self, right? Through the eyes or the lens of good or bad. You're going to have to release that to get to the truth, because sometimes the truth is just what it is, right? The truth is not sometimes, all the time, the truth is what it is, whether good or bad. And so the truth has to be acknowledged, at least within you. The truth about who you are, the truth about how you feel, the truth about what you think, the truth about everything. You have to at least be truthful with yourself. And sometimes that is very difficult, especially with things that have ailed us for so long. ailed us for so long, or for things that happened before we were conscious, like before the age of 7. Those things are still recorded within all of your bodies and within your subconscious mind, and will have an effect on you always until you go back and sort of, heal, repair, reconcile, reclaim, review, whatever word resonates with you. Then you can sort of start to clear the space. And so finding your voice has a lot to do with your heart. What's in your heart has a lot to do with what's happened to you, your experiences, your actions that you have taken, actions that others have taken towards you, and then everything below that. Okay, so now I'm starting to get into your next. I read underneath your heart, which is your solar plexus. It's the seat of your willpower. Underneath that is your sacral chakra, which connects to so many different things, but in particular, relationships and sexuality, creativity, money. And then underneath that, our root issues, our foundation, our ancestry, our familial, not relationships, but our familial connections, genetics, survival, all of those things. You have to, all of that is going to be what is, it's going to affect and influence what is in your heart, what resides there. So, finding your voice, this is, I think, by far the most powerful way to really get in connection with your voice and what's inside of you. And this is through writing. It depends on what type of person you are. Like, if you're an artist, then you probably have like a mode of expression and getting in tune with your inner voice and the inner workings of yourself. But if you're not so much of an artist, if you're not a musician, if you don't really have a source of expression for yourself, then you really probably, can consider journaling a practice to help you really get in touch with what's inside of you. And journaling is a yin practice. And by yin, it's like it can be somewhat passive. It can be involved within the inner workings of you and what's going on with you. And you don't even necessarily have to have a big thing going on with you. But if you just want to feel, if you want to feel like you're rooted in your own ideas and that you're speaking from a place of authenticity, and also from a place of honoring yourself and who you are, then this is a place to start. And then also with the shyness or the timidness, because the truth is we can tend to hide things from ourselves, especially things that we don't want to be true, things that have hurt us, things that we want to forget. And I think that that's a sort of a defense mechanism that we have as human beings, to want to conceal things or hide things, deny things. And it may not even be a conscious thing that you do, but this is also the journey of self. This is also a part of the journey of self-awareness, especially if you consider yourself, walking a spiritual path. Or you want to be an alchemist, so to speak, where you want to transform yourself or transform anything in your life, or transform situations, things that have happened, something that you don't want. If you basically lemonade, okay? That's the way that it's a good way to think about transformation or alchemy in particular. Alchemy, so to speak, not in particular, because it is describing a specific process. But the idea of being an alchemizer is like the idea behind lemonade, where you take something like lemons, because lemons is synonymous with like something that's sour. It's like, what are you going to do with lemons? But it's a figure of speech to say, she, you turn lemons into lemonade. And then when Beyonce came out with her album Lemonade, everybody, if you didn't know what lemonade was then, you certainly know what it is now. Okay, so think of this process of being a transformer or an alchemizer as making lemonade. So you're taking something that is like, a raw material, or like something that's like, I can't really do anything with this in this form, or maybe even something that was sour, or something that was like you didn't like, or something that was painful, and you want to take that through a process of transformation and turn it into lemonade, something that's sweet. Like, who doesn't like lemonade, right? We all like lemonade. So once again, journaling is a great source. So let's get into the journals, because or different ways of journaling. Okay. So as I said, this is a process that I actually started practicing finding my voice. I'm gonna actually say I've always loved writing, because I had a diary when I was like in middle school. Like, I always had a diary or whatever. Like, I think that's a girly thing to do. But then I had an awesome teacher my freshman year in high school, English teacher, and she actually, we had to write a lot of poetry and stuff. We just, yeah, we had to write a lot of poetry or prose. It was just expression. And for the first time in my life, I felt like this is like, I can finally tell the truth, So it depends, so you may have had a childhood where you may have gotten in trouble for telling the truth, or you may have gotten your butt whooped, or who knows. But so then, I fell in love with sort of like poetry and prose for a few years after that. And then after I became an adult and a mother, I discovered blogging. And this was like in the early 2000s, before it was like a thing to do for money, where it was like people just really shared their creative gift or whatever expressions via a blog. And so I started writing my poetry and prose, and I became a part of this like circle of supportive artists who we all had a different like way of expressing ourselves via writing. I remember one guy, he was like, he was a musician, but it was like centered around him playing the guitar, right? And then this other sister, her writings were about hair and stuff. Like, it was like this unique comparison, or like it was just always about hair. And so my thing was like, I would do short stories, and it was really a way for me then to deal with like relationships. And so I continued to blog, but then I just really got into journals, right? And so, these are some of my journals, but I think that it's cool, especially if you're a woman, but you don't have to be, that like you find books that inspire you. And so here's another journal. This one was actually a gift from a dear friend. Thought it was nice, and I've hardly written in it just because I like it so much and I don't want to fill up all the pages. But I like florals, and so finding a book that inspires you from the outside and makes you want to write in it, is a good thing to do, especially if it's like you have some hesitation. And so, you know, I use them for different purposes. I have so many. But I want to talk about, I want to show this one. So this is a cute journal. It's called it says a likely story, but this was inspiring. So I use this for like a manifestation process called scripting, where or affirmation sometimes. Most of the time I use this for scripting. It's like you sort of write a story and you write it in the present tense. It's like you are imagining yourself like where and with what you're wanting to manifest. So you write from that place. And so that's all I do. And so sometimes also as a manifestation practice, I go and I just read things that I've written, and then I'll go back to like things that I wrote a while ago, and I'm like, oh my God, that happened. Oh, that happened. Or, and you'll see like the synchronicities, and you'll be able to see like your manifestations clearer. Because sometimes it's like we ask for so many things, we forget what we asked for, and like, or we want so much, and it changes all the time. So I know this is not about manifestation, so let me get back on the topic of finding your voice. That goes to show there's so many different ways to journal, and so I'll just do other videos where I focus on like these specific journaling techniques. But today I want to talk about specifically journaling as a way to finding your voice, and finding your voice is a part of activating, healing your throat chakra. It's a part of your self-awareness journey. And, you overcome, shyness, timidness, and that sort of thing. And so, so how do you journal? And this is for men, this is for a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. So how do you journal? It's easy, I think the mornings and the evenings are the best times to just journal. Like, if you don't have anything specific that you want to write about, so you just start out. You may, you want to put a date on each entry, right? And then you may just start off, it's like you're kind of talking to yourself, but you're writing out the words. And you may talk about, how your day was. You may talk about what's on your mind. Basically, you allow whatever is on your mind to come out through, through your body via the pen and onto the paper. And what's really cool about journaling is that once you start writing, like you may not feel like you have anything that you want to say or that you want to write, or it just kind of goes slow. But if you allow yourself to just continue writing, you'll be surprised and amazed by what comes out. Okay, and so here's another pointer if you know you need to journal, but it's like really hard to get it to come out. Okay, so this is a trick. You put the pen to the paper and you never lift it up. So even if you are like scribbling for a page or two just to get going, then that's what you do. All right. And in between, and you set the timer, you say, okay, for the next 2 minutes, for the next 5 minutes, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to just write. Right. And then you allow what's in you to come out. Okay. So another technique is let me drink some water. Okay. So another technique you can do is when you feel triggered. Okay. Triggered has become a popular word, but you probably know what being triggered is. And I should probably do a video on that alone because there's so much to talk about when it comes to being triggered. And so, what you really need to know for this is that when you are triggered, then that means that there's something for you to explore within you. Okay, that's what you can control in the moment. It does not mean that whatever happened outside of you to trigger you doesn't need to be addressed, but that's a complete and separate issue. This is we're talking about spirituality, self-awareness, self-empowerment, self-actualization. That's what this is about. And so, or my channel, that's what my channel is about. So we're going to always speak about things from what you have control over. And so you have to know, this is like one of the basic rules, that you cannot control another person and their actions or anything about, or for that matter, you can't control anything outside of yourself. And so you're going to constantly have things happening in your life. People are taking action all the time. So you have to get it to a place. You don't have to, right? First of all, let me say you don't have to. You can live triggered if that's your choice. But if you want to deal with the triggers and if you want to maintain a peaceful demeanor and delight and be composed and in control of your reactions and your emotions, then you've got to learn to process things within you. And maybe not process, okay, because that word is subjective, but I'm just going to say handle what's handle yourself and what's going on with you. And so if you find that you are triggered and you need a moment before responding, then you go to your journal. Okay, just like when people are upset and they're angry and it's like, okay, go take a time, when little kids have to go take a time out, or high school students, they have to step outside the classroom, or if you're upset and somebody says calm down, take a few breaths, then this is like that moment of composure to allow yourself to feel your emotion without creating a situation with another person. Okay, so you go to your journal and you write down what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and don't be afraid. Like especially when you're angry, like if you need to like cuss somebody out first in your journal, then you cuss them out first, right? Because you have to look, if there's levels to this, that might be the level that you're on. So do it. Again, this is about truth and authenticity, right? You have to address the truth of the matter, whatever it is. So if you're at the level of getting ready to cut somebody out, then okay, go to your journal and you do that. Okay. And you may not be at that level. You might be at the level of, well, I know that when this person did that or said that or whatever, or when I went here or went there, or when this happened, I felt, or it reminded me of this thing that happened to me, or I'm like this because this thing, that thing, or whatever. You may be there. So then you go and then you journal from that place. Okay. And then you always bring it back to a place of truth, right? And by that, I mean, when you get to what it is, you have to ask yourself, is that really true? Especially when you're dealing with someone else. Okay, this is how you uproot ideas and thoughts, because ideas, and this is a whole nother video too, but ideas and thoughts and beliefs, these are at the root of other issues in other realms, and in our lives. Sometimes an idea, a belief, a thought needs to be reviewed and extracted from your consciousness. And I'll give you an example. So the one that's coming to mind has to do with money. And so you might be always looking for a discount, or always looking for a hookup, or always looking for the low. And hey, but it underneath that, you might believe that you don't have enough, and you will never have enough. Therefore, I always have to find the cheapest thing I can find. Okay, that was the example that came to mind. So maybe that's for somebody. That's just an example of how an idea, a belief, or a thought, right? Because the belief is deeper. The belief is the deepest thing. And sometimes we're not always aware of the things that we believe in, right? We know on the surface what we think, right? Because that's like a thought is more conscious. Beliefs are more subconscious, right? You got to do some digging. You got to do some writing. You got to do some reflecting, journaling, right? So again, this video is about finding your voice through journaling. There's so many things that you can do with journaling, as you can see, and we'll get there. But so to wrap this up, because we're already at 30 minutes, finding your voice, your true voice, opening up to the truth of what's in your heart, allowing that to flow up through your throat, right? Now, so another thing I want to say is that throat is about expression, right? It doesn't always mean you're vocal. So these are things that you may not actually say or be ready to say to someone else, right? Right now, they're being said through the words on the paper, because that's the best first step, especially when there's fear involved, when there's certain beliefs or experiences that a person has where they're literally scared, right? Because, our body remembers things, just like sometimes our body remembers things that our mind does not. And so your body may respond a certain way. For example, and this is not about remembering, but this is about how your body can hold energy. For example, when you're speaking, your voice trembles, right? Like, or if you're speaking in front of a crowd, like if that's a thing that makes you nervous, your voice may tremble, and like your blood, your heart rate may increase. You may tremble, and it's almost like that is like you can't control it, because that's because your body is responding to some emotion somewhere. The emotions are responding to your mind. Okay, so, and your mind is more than your conscious mind. Your mind is also your subconscious mind. All right, so this is why writing is a great first step to getting there, and it may take some time. So the next thing is just to be patient with yourself. And you'll notice that you'll start to feel better the more that you're expressing yourself to yourself, at least, right? You begin to know your own truths, right? You begin to learn yourself. You become to a more self-awareness. And the more clear you feel, right, the more congruent you're gonna feel. And by congruent, it's like you're being expressing what's really in your heart, right? And you know what's in your heart. What's in your heart, right, is connected to your experiences, your actions, or the actions that others have taken towards you, your relationships, right? Your creativity, your sexuality, your survival, your existence here on the earthly realm, everything that has to do with that. Like, it's all, it all is a part of who you are, how you feel, what you think, right? And so the more you allow this to come out of you, right? You can see it then, right? When you express it, you can see it. And when you can see it, you know it, right? And by see it, I don't just mean like with your physical eyes, I mean like with your inner eyes. Like, you can see yourself. And you're going to feel better because now it's like you're not, being one thing while thinking another thing, while saying another thing, and feeling another thing. Like, you want to bring all of these aspects of yourself together and in alignment and in congruence with each other. And so it will then also increase your self-confidence, right? And it'll increase your faith, or your sense of faith in things, or your power, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up the video. We're at about 35 minutes, but I thank you for tuning in. I invite you to check out my services and products at my website, www.yourwellnessiswealth.com. Thank you for tuning in, and I wish you peace, love, blessings, prosperity, and harmonious connections and experiences. Until next time, bye-bye.